what to make of it. So I figured the best way to deal with this was to stay silent. I didn't want to cause any waves. I didn't want to cause any problems. And I knew that if I told my father about it, certainly he was going to get mad at this guy, and then that was going to make things very uncomfortable. Because now I was still going to have to see him every day, because there was no way my dad was going to fire him over this. He would probably just start a fight. And then that meant I was going to have to still see him every day. And you don't want to have to see your abuser every day, knowing that he's known that you've given up the fact that he abused you. So instead, I chose to stay silent. And that's what I did. I stayed silent. And I didn't say a word about it. But instead, I allowed him to continue giving me drugs. I allowed him to continue taking me out to nightclubs and showing me the way of life. Now, finally, when it all came to a head, when I was about 16 years old, I realized this guy's no good for me. I got to get away from him. He's hurting me. So on my own, I got legally emancipated at 15 years old. At 15 years old, I went to what's called the Producers Pension Health and Welfare Fund. And I looked to see how much money I'd make, because I thought, you know, if I'm going to get away from my abusive parents and the people that they're putting me with to be my responsible guardians, not very responsible, if I'm going to get away from these people, I've got to be able to make it on my own. I've got to be able to financially make it in the world. Restitution, they call it. So I had to see if there was restitution in my future. So I went to the Producers Fund and I looked at what I had earned through the years. And it turned out by 13 years old, I had earned $1 million, which in 1983, 1984, was a heck of a lot of money. That's about $4 or $5 million nowadays. So I earned $1 million, and then I looked to see what was in my bank account. Well, I'll give you a guess. It's a little bit more than $100 and a little bit less than $100,000. Okay? I had $40,000 left when I went and looked in that bank account. And I was working on a movie at that time called The Lost Boys. Now, when I was working on The Lost Boys, I decided, you know, that's when everything kind of came to a head, because my mom was doing a lot of drugs and she wasn't being a responsible guardian. And they almost fired me because that was when I started trying drugs and I was being irresponsible. And so they put my father in place to be the responsible guardian. And that's when, you know, he was so responsible that he showed me his ways. And then turned me on to a guy that was my caretaker that continued showing me his ways. So it just seemed to be getting worse and worse for me. And so when I finally made the move and I got emancipated and I said, I've got to get free of all this, I need my independence. At that time, and I found out there was $40,000 left in my bank account, my father took me to court and he said, okay, I'll sign the emancipation papers, but the only way I'm going to do that is if you give me money to reimburse me for the time that I took away from my business to be with you on your set. Because I took over, right? I helped out. I came in like Superman and saved the day. So therefore, I had to leave my business, right? Well, the business was a place called New Talent Enterprises. And it was a management company that he created to basically, I don't know if any of you have ever heard like John Robert Powers, any of that here. But basically these companies where, you know, you pay them a lot of money and they take pictures of you and they give you an assessment and a seminar and then they tell you whether or not you're going to make it as an actor. It's called a scam. And my father ran this scam company where he had posters of my movies all over the walls. And he would tell people, yeah, pay us, you know, big money and I can make you a star just like my son. So I'm sorry, I took time out of his busy schedule of scamming people to come work on a movie called Lost Boys with me. And as a result of that, he said, well, you're going to have to pay me $40,000, which is all the money I have left in my bank account, for my freedom. And guess what? I did it gladly. I gave him that last $40,000. I walked out of that courtroom that day broke, penniless, and independent. At least I didn't have to get molested anymore. That was the good news. Unfortunately, I was a 15-year-old kid trying to figure out how now I was going to make it in the world. One other thing my father was nice enough to do for me before I gained that independence was set me up with an organization called Hollywood Kids Say No to Drugs. Wasn't that nice of him? That's a leading example. Now, my father put me in that position to be kind of the spokesperson for this organization, which what I didn't know at this time was connected to Nancy Reagan's Just Say No organization, which happened to be the First Lady's platform during her husband's presidency. Now, I was not aware of this, right? But at the end of the day, here I am, the mascot for Just Say No in Hollywood, doing things like presenting our mayor with a memorial jacket for the Just Say No Foundation, or getting people that were friends of mine like Michael Jackson involved in the organization, doing all of this, speaking on behalf of their company, and then not realizing that I was damaging my future because of the fact that my dad, who's signing me up to be the mascot, is smoking weed with me and introducing me to a guy that's influencing me with drugs. So I'm a kid that's, basically dad is pushing drugs on him and at the same time pushing him out in front of everybody saying, here's the mascot for don't do drugs. And by 17 years old, I was a heroin addict. By 17 years old, I was smoking crack. By 17 years old, my career was over. I was put on blast on the front of every newspaper as this bad kid. This bad kid, Corey, who's disgraced Hollywood with his crazy antics and drug addict behavior. And I was very, very hurt, as you can imagine. A kid that all I ever wanted to do was just please my parents, please my family, please everyone. And acting for me was a job, it was a way to get away, a way to escape the reality of my home life. And then I started doing drugs because I think that's what I'm supposed to do to please the adults. Everything in my life was about pleasing them, pleasing them, pleasing them. And in the end, now I was a laughing stock. Now I was on the front of the headlines, once again being abused. My whole life was set up to be abused. Now, where do you go from there? What do you do when your whole life is about abuse? The only thing that I could do was look inside and get myself healthy. So that's exactly what I did. At 19 years old, I entered a state, county-funded rehabilitation center, and I spent 10 months inside that rehabilitation center, on lockdown, away from society. I gave up my job, I gave up my career, I gave up everything. Because at the end of the day, I said, you know what? I'm no good to anybody in this condition. And the only way that I'm going to be able to move forward with my life is to understand that God has a purpose for me. And that purpose may not just be making movies. That purpose may be to learn how to be a happy person, to learn how to be a good person, and help inspire others to do the same. Now, I am very happy to say, from the time that I walked into that drug rehab back in 1998, 89? Wow. Sorry, I'm aging myself. Back in 1989, I walked in, and by 1990, I was sober. Never did hard drugs again. That was a huge accomplishment for me. I was scared. I was very scared, very frightened, and very alone, walking into that rehab for the first time. I was with hardened criminals, gangsters, people who had murdered people with their own hands. And it wasn't for war. But I had to deal with it. I had to deal with it because I needed that level of help. I needed that level of understanding from my peers, from people who had been through what I had been through. And I made my way through it. I spent the time, I spent 10 months in there, I was cleaning toilets, I was on my hands and knees, just like any other criminal. And I worked through it. Now, at the end of the day, that's not what made me stay sober. That's not what got me through it. What got me through it was one thing and one thing only, and that was God. Thank you. Thank you, Lord. I am so so grateful today that I stand here with a child, with a career, with a future. And it's all because I have given my faith to God, and I believe, in the very bottom of my heart, as long as I do His will, I will be okay, no matter what. So today, I move forward with pride and dignity. And I know that I've done a pretty good job raising my kid. I feel very proud of that. I'm very blessed and very honored to have such an amazing young boy. And I'm also very proud and very honored to be able to stand up here today in front of all of you. And I think it's very important that you hear my story, because you understand where I came from. And in hearing my story and in understanding where I came from, it might help better profile somebody like me that you might not understand when they walk through your doors and they tell you that their mom is abusing them, or their dad is abusing them, or their uncle's abusing them, or their cousin's abusing them, or the guy next door is abusing them. Because you know what? It may not look like the evil villain from Batman that's abusing us. It may not look like the bad guy. But you know what? That sweet little old lady may be the bad guy. And that's the thing that we don't understand. We need to recognize that abusers come in all shapes and sizes, all races and genders. Anybody can be an abuser, and anybody can be a victim. So the important thing is that we look within ourselves and we discover our own truth. What are we here for, and what are we fighting for? And for me, today, I not only fight still for my own freedom and my own safety and my own happiness. As you can see, examples, I opened up the paper this morning and there was another form of abuse. But today I rise above it. Today I don't let it eat at my heart. Instead I joke about it and I put it on blast. And I say, don't they feel silly? Doesn't that writer feel silly now for writing those things? Why would he do such a thing? Well, we're all here to try and rejoice. We're all here to try and make a difference. We're here to talk about our accomplishments and our goals and successes and helping other people, lifting them up. That's what it's about. It's about lifting each other up. It's about helping each other out. It's about lending your hearts to your neighbors, to your family, to the people that matter most. Because you know what? We cannot do it ourselves. There's a lot of negativity in this world right now. There's a lot of darkness in this world right now. It's a scary place. It really is. But I believe that we can visualize whatever reality we want for our future. And if we truly believe in that vision, if we truly believe in that idealism of what our future is going to be, we can make that reality happen. It's about hope, it's about positive energy, and it's about faith. And if we have those three things, we can make whatever reality we want for our future. And I believe that you people here today can help the victims themselves by having that same belief in them, by understanding that a drug addict or an alcoholic may not necessarily be the bad guy, but they may be the sick person that needs your help. You know, by understanding that the children that are hurting the most may be right in your own family. You never know where that abuse is coming from, but we need to open our ears and our eyes and our minds, and we need to listen to those around us. And I know for myself, I understand one thing today, which is that communication is the key to everything. If we understand how to talk and feel like we can tell our friends, our family, our peers, or even those police when I was a kid that I ran to, if they would have listened to me, if they would have really heard me, then maybe I wouldn't have had to go back to my mom, and maybe I wouldn't have had to endure all those years of torture and punishment that I got beyond that day. Maybe something would have happened right then and there that would have stopped it. Who knows? But all I know is that today we can make that difference. We can make that change. Because communication is a very valuable tool and a very valuable gift. If we